A real estate action group member and a friend in Edmonton. As you know, we have recommended Edmonton and Calgary for many years. The market, of course, has now been under pressure, particularly because of the oil situation, but in my view is that many times the greatest opportunities are in down markets and not in up markets. James is an incredibly accomplished realtor in Edmonton. His clientele includes many of the most successful residential investors from across Western Canada. When it comes to working with out-of-towners, his team provides a hassle-free investing experience, and for 10 years he's been working with investors who purchase, buy and holds, flips, redevelopments, and even multifamily projects. He also walks the talk with a personal portfolio of over 250 units in the Edmonton area. If you're looking at placing capital in Edmonton, you may want to talk to James. Let's welcome James now.
Hey everybody. I'm here to talk to you about Alberta and what's going on right now. It's been a bit of an interesting year. A lot of my clients from the Vancouver area are a little bit leery about what's going on in our market right now. And a lot of people have been standing on the sidelines, holding on to their investment capital saying, all right, well, let's wait and see what happens. That's kind of been the theme of 2015 for a lot of the out-of-town people is Alberta, wait and see. But first things first, let me introduce myself. So my name is James Knull. I know, it sounds like it should be a silent K, but it's not. It's a non-silent K. I have about 250 rental units of my own in the Edmonton area. I'm in one of the top 1% realtors, not only in Alberta, but also in Canada. And most of my clients are out-of-town people just like yourselves. I'm very established in the Vancouver community. There's a lot of people in this room who I've done business with over the years. And I also love skiing. I figure I'd give it a little personal touch because, well, I want to get to know some of you guys. You should get to know me. If you ever are up in Whistler during the winter, I call it my second home. I love skiing and I love Whistler. So what the heck happened in 2015 with Alberta's economy? Everybody's freaking out about how it's stalled a little bit. And there are two precipitating factors. First of all, the price of oil dropped by quite a bit. And second of all, we had an NDP government get elected. So I'm going to talk about how both of those factors have impacted what's going on in our market in the last year and how that's going to impact the market going forward in 2016. And then ultimately, what are you going to do about it? Because if there isn't any action that you can take, there's really no point to anything I'm saying. And I think the NDP government had a little influence on the Oilers' third jersey that we chose. So I know that you guys have been used to watching the Vancouver Canucks beat up on the Oilers for the past 10 years or so, but well, I think the tides are turning, so watch out. We have McDavid on our side now. Maybe that'll do the trick. So first things first, the NDP won the election, which caught everybody by surprise. So here's a picture of me and Thomas Day, and I'll explain what that has to do with the NDP in just a second. But I'm going to tell you about Thomas first. Thomas, he's a 20-year-old student at the U of A. He's a computer science student. Through one of the organizations that I'm a member of on campus, I mentor young students, and I worked with Thomas when he was 19, mentoring him, teaching him about the business world and so on and so forth. I can tell you he's an excellent young man and a real charmer. The other thing you might know about Thomas is he just won the seat for MLA in Edmonton Southwest. He's the youngest MLA ever elected to the Alberta caucus. So what's the point of this? The point is, while Thomas might be one heck of a guy and a very accomplished young man, right now in Alberta, we've got a bunch of people just like Thomas, university students, retired social workers, people with really no experience whatsoever in government, now trying to run our multi-billion-dollar Alberta economy. So while I love Thomas, I can tell you the biggest project I helped him with last year was raising about $3,000 for the Boys and Girls Club. And now, he's helping run the Alberta economy. So what I'm saying is, while everybody's freaking out about the NDP, right now they're trying to figure out how to run a province. They're not making big changes that are causing the province to go into a tailspin. So let's examine what the NDP really did in 2015 and talk about whether or not that's going to have a huge impact on what's going on in Alberta. First thing they did, they're going to be increasing the minimum wage to $15 by 2018, and they're going to be increasing it by $1 per year going forward. Now this has a lot of small business owners screaming bloody murder, but you have to keep in mind in Alberta, we've got the highest disposable income per week of anywhere in the entire country, pretty much anywhere in North America. And so when it comes to passing on minor minimum wage increases through business and services like restaurants, it's not really going to impact the average Alberta consumer that much. The next thing that they've done is we're going to be phasing in an increased carbon tax. So right now we've got $15 per ton. It's going to go up to $30 over the next few years. Again, not that big of a deal considering pretty much everywhere else already has a $30 carbon tax, and now we're catching up. Oil royalties, frozen until the end of 2016. They campaigned on doing a royalty review. Everybody was scared this was going to everybody was worried this was going to scare away all of the big oil companies because now the royalties are going to go through the roof. They're not going to do anything until the end of 2016 when they actually know what's going on with oil. So for the immediate short term, we're not going to have a huge royalty review pushing all the oil companies away. And finally, they increased the corporate tax from 10% to 12%. Now, my Facebook feed was completely blowing up with people screaming bloody murder over this. But let's look at what that means in real numbers. If you're running a $1 million a year profitable business, this amounts to $20,000 more in tax. So my point is, while this is an increase, it's completely in line with every other province in Western Canada. Every other province has a corporate tax between 11 and 12%, including Ontario. And this isn't really having a huge impact on the ability of Albertans to do business. What has it done? It's caused everybody to freeze and say, whoa, we've got to change. Things are different. We're going to have to pay a little more tax. And for the month of May and June, right after the NDP were elected, nobody really did anything. Sales volume slowed down a little bit. My clients stepped back. Everybody was just in this holding pattern. And I can tell you we've got more political uncertainty on the way. Right now, as you're probably all aware, there's a federal government election going on, and nobody has any idea who's going to win. So what this means is that when there's uncertainty and people don't know what's going to happen, they just pause and freeze for a second. So I don't know who's going to win. And what I'm saying is it doesn't really matter who wins, because once the winner of the election is announced, a lot of people are going to say, oh my God, such and such party just won. I don't know what that's going to mean for the Canadian economy, so I'm just going to hold on and wait and see for a second. So this wait and see frozen mentality is going to impact the fall market as well. And I can tell you, when people freeze in Edmonton, we really know how to freeze. I actually took this picture on Friday before I got on the plane. I know, it's nice. All the ice that was on the river in August kind of cleared up a little bit. So let's talk about the real market driver. Oil prices dropped, and they dropped a lot. This is November 2014, right down to the beginning of 2015. So this is when a lot of the sophisticated investors I know who were around in the 2006, 7, 8, 9 oil boom and crash said, oh, oil's low again. I know what that means. It means Alberta's economy is not too far behind these low oil prices. That means house prices are going to start to soften. And so let's look at the historical fluctuations of oil. Basically what I'm trying to establish with this graph is oil is not a static commodity. It goes up, it goes down, it goes up, it goes down. And we've seen this happen time and time again. This was the big crash in 2008. You can see we've got other low points in the market. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be overlaying real estate data over top of the oil prices so you can really see how Alberta's housing market is impacted by the oil market. So let's zoom in a little bit. Because timing is everything. And if you want to be as profitable as possible in Alberta real estate markets, be that Edmonton or Calgary, you want to take a look at what's going on in oil. You want to take a look at the macroeconomic indicators surrounding oil and the housing market, and then you want to make your move at the right time. So this is what's been going on in the last 20 or so years. You can see we had that run-up of oil, all of a sudden a huge spike, values peaked, oil plummeted, they kind of came back, we had this little spike in 2010, they've been zigzagging along, and then they drop. So again, it trends, it goes down, it goes up. So here's how house prices and oil prices have lined up over the last 30 years. You can see when we had this big drop, house prices dropped. We had the drop after 2010, we had a little drop. And now oil has dropped again, and house prices are very likely going to trend down again. And then when oil trends up again, we'll see house prices trend up again. So over the last 10 years, you can see, zoomed in, we've got the peaks, we've got the valleys, we've got peaks, valleys, and then over the upward trend, we've got a little bit of a softening start to happen in house prices. This is what we're going to see over the next little bit. Now, there are other economic drivers indicated by housing market stats that are available through whatever your local municipality's real estate website is. So I went to the Edmonton Real Estate Board website and compiled this data. So when we look at a strong market, the total number of listings go up. And then we have the listings plummet, they go up. As the market regains strength, the total number of listings go down. And then as people freak out, the listing inventory has already started to creep up because people see it coming. They've seen the oil price go down, they want to unload their properties. Same thing with days on market. The days on market was, so sale price to list price ratio. So our sale price to list price ratio basically means how many houses sell versus how many houses are listed. So as the market regains strength, more of the inventory gets absorbed, and then as the market weakens, we can see less houses getting absorbed again. So our sale price to list price ratio drops. Days on market. As the market gets stronger, houses sit on the market less and less and less time, and then as the market weakens again, the number of days on market increases. So again, it's a very similar relationship to the last time oil fluctuated. So to come back to my point, if we want to know about house prices in Alberta, we need to know about oil prices in Alberta. And when we analyze the oil prices and overlay the data of house prices historically, we can see the same story playing out again. We're going to have a window of opportunity that's going to open, and we're going to have the opportunity to take advantage of that. And as long as you're able to fill your portfolio with properties in our market before oil prices start coming around again, you should have an opportunity to make a little bit of money. Now I'm going to pause for a second and say, look, I don't really know when oil prices are going to rebound. And if anybody in this room says they do, they're probably just blowing smoke. But what I do know is that historically oil prices come around. And when they do, you don't want to start buying when it's too late. You want to buy when all the indicators say the market has started to slow down, which is what we're entering right about now. From fall of 2015, we're going to have a little window right after the election results are announced where everybody's going to freeze up. And trust me, there are going to be motivated buyers out there who will buy into the hype of the government's change, especially if the NDP and the Liberals win, because that's going to be not only uncertainty, but it's going to be uncertainty with a new government. And you're going to say, yeah, you're right. You know what? The sky is falling. You should probably just give me your property at $30,000 less than you originally had planned on selling it for. Let's take a look at Edmonton. The thing about Calgary is when the oil market fluctuates, Calgary gets these really big swings. So does Grand Prairie, so does Fort McMurray. But I'm from Edmonton. I'm going to talk a little bit more specifically about Edmonton. And we have a little more stability than the rest of the Alberta market for a couple of key reasons. First of all, we've got the University of Alberta. And the cool thing about the University of Alberta is there's 39,000 students and another 15,000 staff. And I can tell you right now, none of those people care whether or not the economy is up or down because they're going to school and they're teaching classes and they're making the university run. We've got the CFB Garrison. That's 13,000 staff and family running and operating a military base directly to the north of the city. And there's about 40,000 Government of Alberta staff working in the Edmonton area. So when you add all that up, we're pushing 100,000 people whose livelihood and reason for being in Edmonton has nothing to do with the oil economy. That insulates us a little bit more from the volatility than some of the other major markets in Alberta. Now we've got an ace up our sleeve this time that we didn't have in 2008. And that ace up our sleeve is the downtown core in Edmonton is going through a massive construction boom. So right now in downtown Edmonton, there are $4.8 billion worth of projects, 39 projects in total, that are making the downtown skyline look completely different over the next 3 to 5 years. Now, I'm talking the new arena, I'm talking apartment high-rises, I'm talking commercial high-rises. All in all, if you take a quick gander in downtown Edmonton, all you'll see is cranes. Now, I want to put things into perspective, because talking about a bunch of high-rises being built to a room full of Vancouverites is kind of old hat. That's what you guys like to do around here. But let's take Edmonton's real downtown core and overlay it on downtown Vancouver. As you can see, We don't really have the same size that you guys have. So when I say $4.8 billion of construction, that's in a very tiny little area. Edmonton's downtown is still just a teeny tiny little space compared to what you guys have going on. The other thing going on, you guys want to see that one more time? I hear some whispering. Really? I'll show you a map in just a second. So this is Edmonton's downtown core. So that tiny area that I highlighted is basically right here. So here, 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 and here. This is where everything is happening. This orange T-shaped structure is the new Oilers Arena district. So this is kind of where all that stuff is happening. And then these blue spots here are the LRT that just opened. Unfortunately, a year behind schedule, but at least it's open now. And the other major development that's happening in Edmonton, for those of you that like targeting key infrastructure expansion, is the LRT that's breaking ground next year in 2016. So again, teeny tiny little downtown core, and then the LRT leading out of it and out to the southeast. So this neighborhood right here, excellent target for acquisition. Now, I want to sum up the economics talk by saying, look, when we hit the bottom of the market, it's not like the bottom of a valley with a run up the other side. It's more like skipping a stone on a pond. You throw it, and it hits the bottom, and then skips up a little bit, and then it skips and skips and skips and skips. This is what happened between 2008 and 2010, where we saw the market zigzag along the bottom for about a 24-month period, and every time we reached the bottom, you'd see all the newspapers saying, that's it! This is it! We're never coming around again. And then we'd have a little bit of an uptick, and everybody get really excited. And really, if you took the net gain or loss in that period, the market didn't really change at all. It just zigzagged as we kind of got used to the market being in a bit of a plateau, and then it took off again. So my point is, if you're of the mentality where you're sitting there saying, I'm going to be the world's biggest genius, and I'm going to time the bottom, and I'm going to buy my property right at the very bottom of the market, that's a strategy you're going to have a little bit of trouble with. Because number one, the actual bottom of the market is going to be a 1-month window. And if you have a goal of building a portfolio of properties, buying all of your properties in a 1-month window isn't really a logistical feasible thing to happen. And number two, every time that stone skips, it's going to feel like the bottom. So what I'm saying is right now, we're heading into that skipping period where there's going to be a window of opportunity that exists as the stone skips along the bottom. So what do you do when it's a slow market? What do you do when the stone is skipping? I'm going to give you a few practical tips. So if you're the kind of person that likes to take notes, these are a few bullet points that are going to be really handy. First of all, what to do in a slow market? Fill your vacancies. Because as tenants get more selection, as vacancy rates go up, as rents go down in a slow market, you don't want to be the one caught holding the bag with nobody there to pay your rent. Because if you become negative cash flow and if you're feeding those properties, it's going to set you back quite a bit in your investment portfolio. You want to minimize your tenant turnover. So this is the customer service side of real estate. Not only do you want to be good at advertising to fill your vacancies, but once you have a good tenant in place, up your game a little bit. Keep those people happy. Make sure that your tenants know that you appreciate their business and treat their business with a higher level of respect. Because if they leave, you're going to be in a vacancy situation and you're going to have to spend money to deal with that. Acquire based on cash flow. So especially when we're dealing with a slow part of the market, you want to make sure that when you buy a property, it's got a really good spread of cash flow from your revenue to your expenses. And the reason for that is because if the market slides a little bit more after you buy it, you want to be able to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to drop the rent by $100 a month, and that's okay, because I know that in another year, I'll raise it back up. It's time to make aggressive offers, because there are people out there who really do feel like the sky is going to be falling. There's going to be some panic. Not everybody's going to give you a deal, but if you go out there and you really probe the motivation of your vendor with a little bit of extra elbow grease and a little bit of extra legwork, an aggressive offer will get you a long way. I remember back in 2008, our sale price to list price ratio, and so that means how much below list price offers we're going for, was about 90 to 92%. That's insane. You can go in and write an offer 10% below list price in Edmonton and have a very good chance of getting it accepted. For reference, in the last 3 years, that's been about 98.5%. So when the market slows down, you have the opportunity to get the deals. And finally, focus on quality property. So if you're making acquisitions in these kind of slow periods, you definitely want to focus on picking up really good quality properties, so that it's easy to fill your vacancies and you minimize your tenant turnover. So, a real example of that, we've got property A, we've got property B. These are both kitchens from basement suites that I've seen. I just snapped pictures while I was out and about this week so that I can show you guys something fresh for the presentation. If you had choice between each of these properties to rent, what are you going to pick? Obviously, you want to pick the nice guy that's finished, nice cabinets, looks new, looks fresh. And again, coming back to what's going on with the average Albertan, we've got a lot of disposable income. And the difference in rent between the old-looking one and the new-looking one is probably in Edmonton's market, maybe $100 to $125 a month. And I can tell you, when tenants have selection, the conversation that's going to be going on is, you know, honey, for $100, let's just go with the nice one. When vacancy rates are around 1% like it was last year, people are just happy to get a place to live. But now, the ball's starting to go back in the tenants' court, and they're realizing that they've got selection. The good quality properties are going to go first. Those are the vacancies that are going to get filled. So, if you're thinking about checking out Alberta again after our year of waiting and seeing what's happening, how are we going to take advantage of 2016 in Alberta? Well, the three that I like the looks of right now are downtown condos, because of all the development that's happening in the area, multifamily, which I think is a really popular choice from a lot of the conversations I've had today in the room, and basement suited houses, mainly because they cash flow so well. So let's get right down to it. New downtown high-rise. So we've got some really cool buildings being built in Edmonton right now. Again, this is kind of old hat in Vancouver, but to have a really pretty glass tower go up in downtown Edmonton is a pretty big deal for our little old city. We're all pretty stoked to have beautiful architecture going into our downtown core. And the thing about these downtown high-rises, the reason I'm bringing them to the table is because I know there's a lot of investment in Vancouver that happens where people just buy these condos all cash and sit on them knowing that it's a safe place to invest because of the stability of the market. That's what's going on in Edmonton's downtown core, whereas all of the investment gets spent. Every tower that sells at a higher price per square foot than the tower before it, and we're really starting to gain that condo momentum in downtown. So right now, a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 1,000 square foot, sharp-looking new condo in downtown Edmonton is selling for about $435,000. I know that'll buy you half of the bathroom in Yaletown, but if you come to Edmonton, you get the full deal. So the unfinished rent is about $1,800 a month on a place like this, which means you need to put 35% down. It's going to have an annual yield of 0 to 1% cash on cash. But again, it's a stability play. And if you're the kind of person who's very well capitalized and just wants a safe place to park some money to take advantage of the growth in the Edmonton market in the downtown core, this is a really good way to do it without exposing yourself to a lot of leverage. If you want to make a cash flow your standard 20% down, I'd recommend doing a furnished apartment because you're going to get a yield of about 3.81%. The other way to take advantage of condos in the downtown core are these old school walk-up apartment buildings. Just to the north of the arena in a neighborhood called McDougall, and then just to the west of that in a neighborhood called Queen Mary Park, there are tons of these walk-up apartment buildings that have been converted into condos that you can buy by the unit. Now when you're buying them, make sure that part of your due diligence is to be extra careful when analyzing the condo documents and the condo corporation, because again, a lot of these were repurposed by developers to strata title them, and not all of them were done well. So just make sure you're being really diligent when buying these types of units. But the cool thing is, you can get a 2-bedroom unit a stone's throw away from the new arena and the new LRT stops for about $140,000 for a 2-bedroom. They'll rent out for $1,200. Your monthly cash flow will be about $170 a month, giving you a decent buffer in this unstable period, and you'll get an annual yield of about 7.3%. So if you like the idea of being close to all of this development and you're on a bit of a budget, these might be the perfect properties for you. Let's talk about multifamily in Edmonton. So again, I'm going to stick mostly to talking about walk-up apartment buildings because I think that the average person in this room talking about concrete high-rises isn't really that applicable. Now, here's a couple of key points about Edmonton that specifically pertain to the multifamily game that I think put us miles ahead of what you guys are dealing with in BC. And that's the fact that we have no rent controls. So, one of the coolest strategies that you can adopt in the Edmonton market that you don't really have access to in the BC market is you can buy a building that's under rented, either because of poor renovations or because of poor management, increase the rents by as much as you can to market, and then taking the new net operating income and refinancing the building. Now, right now in this slow market, that's a bit of a riskier proposition. So I would recommend buying buildings for stability and then waiting for the market to increase. But when the market takes off again, if the rent goes up by $150 in a year, you're increasing your rent by $150 in a year, which really gives you a lot of room to add value to your property when there's an opportunity to do so based on market rents. So let's just take a quick snapshot of what multifamily in Edmonton looks like. I don't want to bore you with huge pro formas and details. I just want to give you a 30-second idea of what each type of multifamily would look like. If you want intro level, if you want something on the lower end of the price scale, I'm talking a transition area, I'm talking something that might need a little bit of work. We're looking at cap rates of 5.5% to 6.25%, price per door of about 110 to 120. If you want something that's a little more stable, either higher quality building, higher quality location, or a combination of both, well, 4.75 to 5.5 cap, 120 to 140 a door, stable areas, sometimes areas of redevelopment. Basically, if you want something in the arena district where you don't have to do any of the work and it's already full of good tenants, this is kind of what we're looking at. And if you want something that is just a steady eddy in a neighborhood with extremely low vacancy, I'm talking the Oliver area, which is kind of like our Yale Town area, or near the university, or in more of an established neighborhood. The caps are a little bit lower because it's a little bit less risky. Your price per door increases by a little bit more, but this is the kind of play where if you're the person that doesn't like volatility at all and you want to know that you have a low vacancy rate backing your investment, those are the neighborhoods that you're going to look at. Finally, let's talk about basement suited houses. Now the cool thing about basement suited houses in Edmonton is that it's easy to get permits for legalization. Most of the other municipalities in Alberta don't really have easy processes available to legalize your basement suites. And having an illegal basement suite puts you on the track to potentially getting shut down by the city. And if that happens and you can't rent out your suite anymore, it just throws your cash flow projections all out of whack. So if you don't want that kind of risk exposure, Edmonton's a great place for your basement suites. The tenant culture is used to renting basement suites in Edmonton because we have such a high inventory of houses with basement suites. So when you're renting them out, people are used to seeing basement suites and they're used to renting them. And the real nice part about basement suites in Edmonton is they have the highest possible cash flow out of any other type of asset class. They have the highest cash on cash yield. So if we look at a typical basement suited house of $450,000, the net building rent is going to be about $2,900 right now. That's going to be a monthly cash flow of $880. And that's a true cash flow. So when I say cash flow, I mean your revenue, so your rent, minus mortgage payment, insurance, taxes, vacancy, and repair allowance, as well as 10% for property management. Because that's obviously going to be part of your game plan if you're from Vancouver looking at Edmonton. And that represents an annual yield of 11.7% if you compare your cash flow to your purchase price. So if you're looking in the Edmonton market, I was trying to find the perfect analogy for all you outdoorsy Vancouver folks, and I settled on somebody going for a hike with the backpack. So basically, when you're going through for a hike, through the mountains, it's not straight down, it's not straight up. You're going up and down over rolling hills. There's going to be elevation changes. You're going to be exposed to the elements. You're going to be out in the woods. Maybe you're going to see a bear, I don't know. And you want to be prepared. And so the way that we're going to be prepared is by focusing on cash flow, focusing on low vacancies, focusing on quality properties, and knowing that, to pull on the previous analogy, that stone is going to skip across the bottom a couple of times. But if you're looking to build a portfolio in Edmonton, and you've been waiting all year for that window of opportunity to open, that window of opportunity has started to open. The days on market is going up, the sale price to list price ratio is going down, prices have started to soften, and the cherry on top, we have an election that's going to freak everybody out and really stall prices heading into the Christmas season. So, if you'd like to keep in touch with me, my name's James. I've got a really awesome mailing list, so if you want to join it, there's my email address. I am at the booth that is kind of tucked away in the corner by the windows, so if you're interested in Edmonton, please do come talk to me. We've got a lot of really exciting stuff going on in the winter, and if you want to come to Edmonton and pay this town a visit, I would be more than happy to drive you around, show you a couple of the neighborhoods, show you a couple sample properties, and take you out for lunch at a really cool local spot. Thank you very much.